This is a news. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's begin with the top headlines making news around the world. United States eases oil sanctions on Iran, but Tehran denies J.D. Vance's claim to allow nuclear inspectors. Ukraine and Russia exchange deadly strikes with at least one child killed. And North Korea says it will expand its nuclear arsenal, citing rising tensions from U.S.-South Korea military cooperation. Washington and Tehran have confirmed major economic and security breakthroughs following high-level peace talks in Switzerland. Iran secured critical sanctions relief and the unfreezing of billions in assets, while escalating standoffs over naval control in the Strait of Hormuz remained. Our report has the details.
A tense diplomatic breakthrough driven by military pressure. US President Donald Trump and Iranian chief negotiator Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf have confirmed major economic and military agreements following Swiss talks. Tehran has secured critical oil and banking waivers alongside the release of $12 billion in frozen assets. But Trump mandates this capital be spent exclusively on American agricultural imports.
Money that's being unfrozen is going to be used to buy food, and the food's going to be bought exclusively through the United States from our farmers. And corn, soybeans, all of the things they need are going to be bought from our farmers. So our farmers are very happy. I've had a lot of calls. They were very happy about this.
The American president linked this diplomatic shift directly to hard military action, marking the one-year anniversary of Operation Midnight Hammer, a strategic strike he claims permanently altered the regional balance.
It was the most successful attack that anyone's ever seen with a bomber that totally wiped out their nuclear potential. If we didn't do that, you'd have no Israel right now. They were 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon.
Tehran, meanwhile, rejects Washington's narrative, framing the signed oil and banking waivers as a resistance victory. In transit, Khalibaf confirmed the temporary exemptions are legally secured, but warned that pre-war control over the strategic Strait of Hormuz is permanently over.
Everyone should know that the administration of the Strait will never return to the way it was before the war. These temporary restrictions must be lifted until we are able to remove the sanctions completely.
While both nations agreed to a direct shipping hotline to prevent overnight clashes in the waterway, Washington warns its total naval blockade can reactivate within 15 minutes if Tehran violates the pact.
New statements have been issued regarding the talks between Washington and Tehran. Iran has responded to reports concerning its nuclear program, international inspections and military capabilities. Israel-Lebanon has more details.
Iran's foreign ministry refuted reports that Tehran will grant access to International Atomic Energy Agency to inspect its civilian nuclear sites bombed by Israel and US last June. Spokesman Esmail Baqai also told a weekly press briefing that Iranian negotiators did not meet with the UN nuclear watchdog chief in Switzerland. To a question on whether Iran's nuclear program was discussed with the US officials, he said the issue will be considered after completion of the 60-day period on implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding. Baqai also stressed the reciprocal basis of the memorandum, saying that the nuclear issue will not be discussed if the US fails to carry out its obligations. The spokesman categorically rejected reports that Iran's military might was discussed with the US officials. He said that the ballistic missiles capability was not a subject on the agenda of the Swiss talks, adding that it will not be negotiated with any other party either. Baqai further ruled out any role by the European Union in implementing the Iran-US MOU. He said the European bloc isolated itself by taking side with the US and Israel to reimpose the UN Security Council's nuclear sanctions on Iran last year. When asked about US officials' statements on spending Iran's unfrozen assets, the spokesman rejected any imposition of its purchase list. Israel-Lebanon from Iranian Foreign Ministry for A News.
Now to the Middle East, and while diplomatic contacts between Israel and Lebanon continue, the situation along the border remains fragile. Efforts to advance a possible agreement are underway, but concerns over the durability of the ceasefire persist. Here is the latest on developments in the region.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the country's military leadership have said Israel will maintain its military presence in southern Lebanon. In a joint statement issued after a security meeting on Monday, officials said the Israeli military would continue operations aimed at maintaining a security zone and preventing threats against Israel. The meeting was attended by Netanyahu, Defense Minister Israel Katz, Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir, and Northern Command Chief Ori Gordon. The statement stressed that the security of Israeli citizens and military personnel remains a top priority. The announcement came after talks between Iran and the United States in Switzerland, where efforts to reduce regional tensions and halt military activity across several fronts, including Lebanon, were discussed.
We want an agreement with Lebanon. We feel that there is no reason why an agreement with Lebanon cannot be taken forward. The only impediment is the terrorist organization of Hezbollah, which is why we believe that they should be disarmed and dismantled. Now, however that happens, then obviously Israel will be in favor of that, whether it's through diplomacy or whether it's through military force.
In April, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio hosted rare direct talks between Israeli and Lebanese officials. Both sides said the meeting was constructive. Despite diplomatic efforts, fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has continued in recent months. A ceasefire announced on June 20th remains largely in place. Many displaced people sheltering in tents along Beirut's waterfront say they are not confident the ceasefire will last. Fears of renewed fighting are preventing some from returning home. Lebanese security sources say the truce has mostly held. However, there have been reports of artillery fire near Tyre, the use of sound grenades and Israeli drone flights over Beirut. The conflict has also strained a temporary US-Iran deal aimed at reducing regional tensions. Tehran has accused Washington of failing to meet commitments to help end fighting in Lebanon. US Vice President J.D. Vance said there had been progress in talks related to Lebanon and that negotiations were continuing.
Turning to Eastern Europe, and a deadly cycle of retaliatory strikes has escalated between Russia and Ukraine. A Ukrainian missile attack on Russia's Voronezh region killed 5 people and injured dozens, striking a missile electronics plant. Within hours, Moscow retaliated with overnight airstrikes across Ukraine, wounding 6 civilians and forcing Kiev residents into bomb shelters. Both fights continue targeting critical defense infrastructure as border hostilities intensify. To discuss the military, strategic and geopolitical implications of these developments, we're joined by Lieutenant General Marco Sironia, speaking to us from Lisbon, Portugal. Lieutenant General Sironia, it's a pleasure having you with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
General Sironia, Ukraine says it targeted military communications and logistics facilities. How effective is this strategy in degrading Russia's war-fighting capabilities?
So it's something that the Ukraine has been improving all in the last months. So the capability for long-range precision attacks, and that is it's due to the situation that Ukraine, for the time being, is producing a lot of not only drones, long-range drones, and long-range missiles. Some of them with more than 2,500 kilometers. So it's and Ukraine is producing that more and more each day. So and in that line, they have been able to somehow balance the capabilities of Russia for the same time of attacking. So with that Russian has done with the missiles and drones, and a mix of the two things. So it's the main strategic impact is that now I suppose that the Russians and also the Russian leadership, especially Vladimir Putin, are experience the effects of a war inside their own territory and the biggest cities, especially Moscow and St. Petersburg. Of course, the other point is that Ukraine has been able to target what we call strategic infrastructure. So where the refineries of oil, logistic compounds for military purpose, of course, and all the factories that are very much involved in the production of military capabilities, electronics, missile components, so things like that, and that is something that is important for the strategy of Ukraine. So this situation, coupled with the situation more or less blocked in the front line, so it seems that it could give to Ukraine in the near future more leverage in a negotiation process that will start, I suppose, in the next months ahead. So it's a fight that the Ukraine is doing to have more leverage at the negotiation table in the future, and that it could be linked also with another issue, and it is the situation, the military situation in Crimea, due to the fact that Crimea is now completely blocked by land or by sea. Due to the strategy of Ukraine to do that, so and that would have an impact, of course, in the military purpose in the near future.
General Sironia, also Ukraine has announced a contract with Germany for hundreds of air defense missiles and broader cooperation on missile defense technology. How important could this be for Ukraine's defensive capabilities in the coming month? And also, could expanded German-Ukrainian defense cooperation signal a new phase in Europe's military support for Kiev?
Yeah, that's true. Germany is in the lead of the military cooperation with the Ukrainians, of course. Lots of factories and companies from Germany are producing and are testing equipments. To improve the equipment. So of course, in one of the cases is the Germans they have a capability of air defense that is IRIS-T. It's a missile system that now is being subject to tests to become more than an anti-aircraft, an anti-missile, ballistic missile interceptor. And that will be important, because we know that the Ukrainians are very much dependent of the only kind of missile interceptors that they have, that is Patriots. And so with the war in the Middle East, the Americans needed all the production of Patriots for themselves and for the Gulf countries that use it also. So and that has led to a decrease of the numbers of interceptors for fighting the missiles from Russia. And so that it is important also for Europe, because Europe does not have any kind of missiles interceptors other than the Patriots also. So it's important to have some capabilities in that for that purpose, but autonomous capabilities, and Germany is very much in the lead of that, and that will have impact in the future, because it's something. A capability that could replace, let's see if the test's working well, it seems so, that could replace the Patriots, because Ukraine is not going to have a lot, the Patriots that they need for fighting the Russian missiles. So and that due to the lack of capability of the stocks of the US to provide the number of interceptors of missiles that Ukraine needs. So it's very important. There are other occasions, other situations that the Germans are working with Ukrainians. Anti-drone systems also. It's something very important also for the Ukrainians, especially the transformation of the IDST that is for the time being only anti-aircraft missile that could be expanded and upgraded to an anti-ballistic missile. That will be important for Ukraine, but also for Europe also.
General Sironia, also some reports indicate a worsening fuel crisis in Crimea after repeated Ukrainian attacks on supply routes and refineries. How strategically important is Crimea to Russia's military operations?
That could be most probably after the counter offensive that the Ukrainians did at the end of 2022, when they expelled the Russians from the north of Ukraine. The situation with more strategic impact that could lead to some changes in the course of this war, and that is why, because Ukraine in the last couple of months have been targeting all the logistic routes that goes from Russia to Crimea, but not only, even to the south, the oblasts, especially Kherson Oblast, and Zaporizhzhia, especially Kherson, trying to isolate those areas that are occupied by the Russians, isolating them from the capability of Russia to support the troops and the forces that they have there. And that is the case in Crimea, of course, and in Kherson. And that in Crimea, the reports that we have is that the military authorities stop the capability to give fuel to the civilians that live in Crimea. But what we know also is that lack of fuel is also influencing the capability to provide logistic support to the troops. So, as we know, fuel it's important for the military operations, and so it's something. But also, they are experiencing lack of other issues. So even food, because most of the logistics they were using some special routes and train lines, so that are completely blocked or under attack of the Ukrainians in the last weeks. So what that is leading for the time being is the incapability of the Russians to support their own troops in several sets, not only fuel, but food, spare parts, and that is creating the sensation that, especially in the occupied zone in Kherson Oblast in the south, it's something similar that we have seen in 2023 when the Russians withdraw, and we remember that from Kherson city, due to something similar. The Ukrainians at the time were able to somehow isolate the Russian forces that are at the time that were at the north of the river, inside the city, and they withdraw. So it's something similar that could lead to some people are speaking about the possibility of a collapse of the Russian forces that are in the south of the Kherson Oblast, even in Crimea. Of course, Crimea, for the time being, they have a line through logistic route through the Kerch bridge. But I suppose that we are going to see some more attacks in the Kerch bridge in the next weeks ahead, and that could lead to a very difficult situation for the Russian military force inside Crimea. And we know that Crimea, for the Russians, for Vladimir Putin, is the giant Cruel. So it's the strategic objective most important. So that what that could
Lieutenant
lead.
General Marcus Sironia, thank you very much for this discussion. We have run out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Britain's governing Labour Party is preparing for a leadership transition after Keir Starmer's resignation, with support building behind Andy Burnham, even as some MPs reportedly weigh entering the race to prevent an uncontested succession. Former Health Minister Wes Streeting has endorsed Andy Burnham to replace Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, withdrawing from the contest and strengthening Burnham's position as the frontrunner. Streeting said Burnham could unite Labour and deliver on the party's 2024 election mandate. Nominations for a new leader open on July 9th and close by mid-July, with a replacement due by September if there is a contest. Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch has criticized the timetable, warning the country risks being left without proper governance.
Take us into power.
After Keir Starmer announced his resignation, floods of support and well wishes came in from a number of European leaders. But US President Donald Trump weighed in on Starmer's resignation, blaming energy and immigration policies for his political downfall.
I was critical only from the because I think he's a lovely man, but I said you're really messing up energy. You have windmills all over the place. In the meantime, you have the North Sea oil, and they won't let anybody drill. It's one of the great fields in the world, and they haven't even found most. You know that the UK buys much of its energy. You know where? Norway. You know where they get their oil? The North Sea. The UK has a much better portion of the North Sea. They don't want to do it for environmental purposes, okay? And I told him, he's a very nice man. I mean, sort of a friend of mine. I mean, he was not good to us with NATO, Pete, right? He said, we can't use the island to land. That was the first. For a couple of weeks, he said, well, but ultimately I gave it to you. Now, that was a bad move. That hurt him badly. But I mean, I wish him well, but he's got two problems, energy and immigration and crime. But energy and immigration. And he's, you know, he's really hurt himself very, very badly. Please go.
A decade ago, British voters made a decision that reshaped the country's future and sent shockwaves across Europe. In a historic referendum, the UK voted to leave the European Union, setting in motion years of political upheaval, economic debate, and complex negotiations.
This means that the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
10 years ago, Britain voted to leave the European Union, a decision that became known as Brexit, combining Britain and exit. The debate centred on control. Supporters of leaving said Britain should make its own laws, control immigration, manage its own money, and negotiate independent trade deals. The Leave campaign was backed by figures including Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson. Those who wanted Britain to remain said EU membership supported the economy, made trade with Europe easier, and gave the UK greater international influence. Then Prime Minister David Cameron backed staying in the bloc. Cameron called the referendum because his Conservative Party was divided over Europe and under pressure from anti-EU campaigners. On June 23, 2016, voters were asked whether the UK should remain in or leave the EU. The result, announced the next day, was narrow but historic. 52% voted to leave, while 48% voted to remain. Cameron resigned the morning after the vote. Theresa May, who succeeded him as Prime Minister, triggered Article 50 in 2017, formally beginning the exit process. Britain formally left the European Union on January 31, 2020, ending nearly 5 decades of membership. Though many practical changes took effect only after the transition period ended on December 31st that year. A decade after the referendum, the question is no longer only how Britain left. It is what leaving has cost.
Brexit has, exactly as economists predicted, had a significant negative impact on the UK economy. The UK economy is clearly weaker and smaller than it would have been in the absence of Brexit. Politically, of course, it's much harder to say. I would say two things. One is that we've had a period of political instability since Brexit. And that was not entirely down to Brexit.
But Brexit's impact has not been limited to Britain. It has also reshaped the European Union, forcing the bloc to adapt to the departure of one of its largest economies, biggest military powers, and most influential members.
Brexit obviously has been negative for the UK, but the EU was weakened by the loss of the UK, and that's particularly important in the current geopolitical environment. And the EU would be much stronger if it were to be reassociated with the UK in some form, particularly given the economic, geopolitical, and security challenges we face. Thanks again to Trump's destabilizing influence, but also to the broader trends of the EU, the US, and China. And so I think far-sighted European leaders ought to say, let's put us, yes, of course, we want an economically beneficial relationship and we have to defend our own interests. But in the medium to long run, we would be much stronger with the UK on the inside in some form. And really, that should be something more of a priority, perhaps, for European Union leaders than it currently is.
10 years on, Brexit is no longer just the story of a country leaving the European Union. It is the story of a political promise tested by economic reality, and of a nation still trying to define what sovereignty, prosperity, and control mean outside the bloc.
We'll continue with the main stories of the day after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to news. At least 18 people have died in France as an intense heat wave continues to grip large parts of Europe. Among the victims were 2 children aged 2 and 4 who were found unconscious in a family car. 3 elderly people aged 80 to 95 died from heat-related complications in the Bordeaux region, while 13 others drowned across France as many sought relief from the extreme temperatures. Belgium says it has issued visas to a Taliban delegation to attend an EU meeting on migration in Brussels. The visit would mark the first time the European Union has hosted Taliban officials since the group returned to power in Afghanistan in 2021. Our correspondent Tamim Bahiz has the details from Kabul.
Belgium has confirmed that 5 visas have been issued to members of a Taliban delegation for talks with European Union officials in Brussels. The meeting is expected to focus on migration, particularly the return and readmission of Afghan officials who do not have the right to stay in the European Union. According to Belgium's foreign ministry, the visas are highly restricted. They are valid only for travel to Belgium and only for a very limited period. The European Commission invited the Taliban officials last month as part of discussions on deportations of Afghan migrants. Officials say some EU member states are looking at ways to return people who have committed serious crimes or may pose a security threat. The Commission has stressed that the meeting is technical in nature and does not amount to recognition of Taliban rule in Afghanistan. Human rights groups have raised concerns, warning that talks could put Afghans at risk and undermine EU values. So far, Taliban authorities here in Kabul have not commented on the delegation's visit to Europe. For now, the EU is presenting the talks as a migration management discussion. But the presence of Taliban officials in Brussels is likely to remain politically sensitive. Tamim Bahiz in Kabul, A-News.
Kazakhstan's president is in Brussels for talks with the European Union's leadership. The visit comes as the country seeks to expand cooperation with Europe beyond its traditional focus on energy and trade. Our correspondent reports from Almaty.
President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has arrived in Brussels for an official visit. Before traveling, he set out his vision on the future of Kazakhstan-EU relations in an article published by Euronews. While the EU is already Kazakhstan's largest trade and investment partner, the president argues that cooperation now needs to move to a new level. Tokayev is expected to hold talks with the European Council President Antonio Costa and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Kazakhstan currently supplies around 13% of the European Union's oil imports and 16% of its natural uranium imports. But Tokayev says the relationship should go beyond the traditional model of raw materials and investment with a greater focus on technology, industrial cooperation and joint projects. Agriculture is one area of importance, he highlighted, with food security as a global priority. Kazakhstan sees opportunities to expand cooperation with the European markets. In turn, European technologies and investment could help strengthen processing industries inside Kazakhstan. Another key focus is the Middle Corridor, a trade route linking Europe and Asia. Tokayev says it should become an economic bridge linking European markets with Central Asia and beyond. It could help strengthen trade, investment and connectivity across the region. Tokayev also touched on the importance of collaborating on artificial intelligence, digital transformation and innovation. He argues that Kazakhstan should be seen as a supplier of strategic resources and as a country investing in new technologies and innovation. These issues are expected to be high on the agenda during his talks with EU leaders in Brussels. Farisa Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Kazakh Prime Minister Oljas Bektenov met Chinese Premier Li Qiang during a visit to China. The talks focused on cooperation in trade, investment, agriculture and transport. Both sides highlighted the continued development of the strategic partnership. According to official figures, trade between Kazakhstan and China exceeded $48 billion in 2025. As part of the visit, Bektenov also attended a session dedicated to the Belt and Road Initiative. He said Kazakhstan remains a key transit route across Eurasia and noted that significant investment has been made in transport infrastructure in recent years. The session discussed trade routes, transport links and the future of regional economic cooperation.
Шамамен $30 миллиард көлемінде инвестиция салды. Қытай қосылған құны жоғары өнім өндіруге бағдарланған ұзақ мерзімді инвестициялардың жүйелі өсімін құптаймыз. Өткен жылы Қытайдан тартылған инвестициялар көлемі $2,8 миллиард құрады. Бұл екіжақты қатынастар тарихындағы рекордтық көрсеткіш болды. Қазақстан мен Қытайдың өзара құрмет пен қолдауға негізделген достық және қазіргі уақытта екіжақты қатынастар мәңгілік әрі жан-жақты стратегиялық серіктестік рухында дамып, жаңа алтын 30 жылдық кезеңге қадам басуда. Біздің елдеріміздің көшбасшылары құрметті Қасым-Жомарт Кемелұлы Тоқаев пен Си Цзиньпин арасындағы жеке достық байланыстар мемлекетке бағытталған жаңа биік мақсаттарға қарай ілгерілеп келеміз. Қытай Қазақстан экономикасындағы
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is vowing to accelerate his country's military buildup, saying US and South Korean actions have pushed the region to the brink of nuclear war. Laura Westbrook reports from Hong Kong.
In a speech during a three-day meeting of the ruling Workers' Party, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accused the US and South Korea of making the security situation on the Korean peninsula more dangerous. Kim says Washington and Seoul's expanding cooperation includes pursuing the acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines by South Korea. In the face of these developments, Kim says Pyongyang needed to accelerate efforts to expand and strengthen a powerful and absolutely reliable deterrent for self-defense. State media says that the meeting agreed that expanding its nuclear forces and exercising its position as a nuclear weapons state is the way to respond to an unpredictable international military and political situation. Kim also ordered the buildup of conventional weapons and accelerated construction of a 10,000-ton strategic guided missile cruiser. Pyongyang has repeatedly declared itself an irreversible nuclear state since the 2019 summit between Kim and US President Donald Trump in Hanoi collapsed over the scope of its denuclearization and sanctions relief. Analysts say that Kim's latest comments underscore Pyongyang's continued rejection of denuclearization and push for recognition as a nuclear state. Earlier this month, Kim's powerful sister said the North's nuclear policy was a line of no retreat. And last week, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung said President Trump had told him it was time to pay attention to the North Korea issue. He told reporters he had told the US president at a meeting of the G7 in France that sanctions on the North were ineffective. Pyongyang is under multiple sets of sanctions aimed at curbing its nuclear and missile programs. Laura Westbrook for A News in Hong Kong.
And US President Donald Trump has praised what he called a great relationship with Venezuela, saying Washington is taking tremendous amounts of oil from the country.
Venezuela, by the way, has been amazing. We are really having a great relationship with that country, taking out tremendous amounts of oil, far, far more than that particular war cost, many, many times. Sending it to Houston, sending it to Louisiana, sending it to lots of places. And Venezuela is also doing well. Venezuela is doing better than it's done in maybe ever. So it's been an amazing situation. Where did you ever hear of getting money back from the war by 42 times over, right, Pete? Nobody does that.
Now to South America, and Colombia is awaiting its final verified election result after a deeply divisive presidential race. The left-wing candidate is challenging tens of thousands of ballot boxes, while the apparent winner is already receiving congratulations from abroad.
Colombia is facing uncertainty after left-wing candidate Ivan Cepeda challenged the election process following a razor-thin preliminary loss to right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella. Cepeda says his team has filed complaints and will contest 57,189 ballot boxes. He urged supporters to remain calm, saying the country remains deeply polarized and that final results have yet to be confirmed.
I want to make a very cordial call for serenity and calm. And if there are public expressions in favor of or against any particular circumstance, they should take place strictly within the framework of calm and peaceful mobilization. If such mobilizations take place, which I want to be clear, we are not calling for.
Initial results showed De La Espriella with 49.66% of the vote, ahead of Cepeda by around 250,000 votes. Under Colombian law, a final verified count overseen by notaries and judges is required, although it was not yet clear whether that process would alter the preliminary outcome. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump congratulated De La Espriella, saying he looked forward to building a strong relationship with Colombia. Trump said De La Espriella had called to thank him for his support and predicted ties between the two countries would improve.
So he called me last night and he thanked me for the endorsement. He won the election. He wasn't anticipated to win, but he won, and he won handily. It's just an honor. He was just a good man.
The result points to a shift to the right in Colombia and adds to a broader rightward trend across Latin America.
And staying on the World Cup, Argentina and France strengthened their credentials as title contenders with important victories from key scorers Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappe. While attention now turns to today's fixtures as the group stage continues across North America. Let's take a look at the recent results. Argentina 2-0 against Austria in Group J. France 3-0 against Iraq in Group I. Norway 3-2 against Senegal in Group I. And Jordan 1-2 against Algeria in Group J. After the break, we'll continue with the main stories shaping the region. Stay tuned.
Manuel González, Bautista Juan, Francisco Fernández.
Why is there a list of Spanish names at a flight school in the Soviet Union?
I added a year to my real age because otherwise I wouldn't have qualified.
$1,011,697 were paid for the training.
So they gave them Russian names, and nobody would know anything.
They turned them into fighter pilots in 6 months.
Flying, classes, and non-stop.
There were about 20 fatal accidents. That's nothing for 850 kids who knew nothing about aviation.
Any enemies?
There were 40 of them.
I didn't see a single one.
They wore headsets connected by rubber tubes.
In an unknown language.
It was made entirely of wood and fabric.
It doesn't have any brakes either.
The I-16 was like a doll.
We flew at 6,000 meters without oxygen.
Push the stick forward.
Truly scared.
Some pilots would lose consciousness and fall.
In this way, the Republic held out for not 1, but 3 years.
Then the school was closed. If you return to Spain, Franco will execute you.
Stalin approached him and asked, are you Georgian? No, I'm Spanish.
President Tokayev's visit to Brussels mean for Kazakhstan, the European Union and the future of the Middle Corridor. Joining us now is Zanat Maminkulov, senior lecturer at Eurasian National University, speaking to us from Astana, Kazakhstan. Mr. Maminkulov, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Hi there, thank you.
Hi. Mr. Maminkulov, how significant is President Tokayev's visit to Brussels, and 1 year after the Samarkand summit, what tangible progress has been made in EU Central Asia cooperation?
I think this visit is quite important. First of all, Kazakhstan is partly a European country. 5% of territory of Kazakhstan belongs to Europe. So the visit is formally bilateral, but substantively strategic at the EU level, because European Union needs resources from Central Asia, especially from Kazakhstan. So this is very historic moment because Kazakhstan now turns its face into Europe in a new geopolitically situation where Russia's role is weakening, and Kazakhstan, as a leader of Central Asia and the Turkic worlds, wants to build new bridge with European Union on a absolutely new level. We need partnership. Recently, our Minister of Science and the President of Kazakhstan issued their articles. It was a strategic signal to the European Union that we don't want to be just a resource center. We want to be integrated into this intercontinental bridge or ecosystem. We want to be equal partner. We don't want to be just a resource supplier. We want to be embedded into this strategic transport, logistics, economic and geopolitical system, and the trust is key here. And I think that the result of this visit is to stress that Kazakhstan is part of the European country, and we will pay more attention to Europe, and Europe's role will only grow in these circumstances, because many experts wrongly said that Europe's fate is finished, but now we see that something is happening in Europe, and it seems that Europe will be very important part.
Mr. Maminkulov, why has the Middle Corridor become such a strategic priority for both Kazakhstan and the European Union? And how much of Europe's interest in the corridor is driven by the war in Ukraine and the reduced viability of routes through Russia?
Of course, the Middle Corridor is central for Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and European Union connectivity strategy. It provides a viable transcontinental links through Caspian Sea to Europe and bypassing Russia. I think its development transforms resource cooperation into operational supply chains and reduce geopolitical transit risks. So the question is that in Astana is that to what extent Europe is serious about bringing technology and expertise to the region. Building an ecosystem is reciprocal process, right? So in terms of the Ukraine war, I think that the strategic role of the Caspian Sea and the Azerbaijan with Kazakhstan will only grow. So Europe needs Kazakhstan, needs Azerbaijan and Turkey world, the Central Asia, in order to strengthen its role in a newly transforming Eurasia, where center of power will be in Eurasia. So the Europe also wants to be important part of this transportation links.
So what are main bottlenecks that still prevent the Middle Corridor from reaching its full potential?
I think that the major problem is that the positions of the states quite different, but we want to coordinate and make them like integrated with each other. On that, so these visits, the meetings and the Turkey platform, the role of Turkey and Azerbaijan in Armenia will open up this opportunity to be linked with Europe. We need Europe. Europe needs us, needs Azerbaijan in order to build this ecosystem. This bridge will only make us resilient in front of the different kind of geopolitical pressures from the south and east.
Professor Janat Mamikilov, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us. We appreciate your time and analysis on this important development in EU-Central Asia relations. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Turkmenistan's President Serdar Berdimuhamedov is in Fuzuli in Azerbaijan's Karabakh region as part of his three-day state visit to the country. He arrived at Fuzuli International Airport on Tuesday, where an honor guard was lined up to greet him. He was also welcomed by President Ilham Aliyev. The two held high-level talks in Baku on Monday to discuss strengthening cooperation between Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan. A major transit operation is underway in the South Caucasus as Azerbaijan facilitates the railway shipment of Russian cargo directly to Armenia. Over 400 tons of agricultural supply have been officially cleared Azerbaijani transit hubs, heading for the Armenian border.
We are seeing significant activity on the regional transit and cargo routes today, with fresh shipments moving across Azerbaijani borders. Just today, on June 23rd, 6 wagons of fertilizer made their way from Russia through Azerbaijan, heading directly toward Armenia. To be exact, this 408-ton cargo was dispatched from Azerbaijan Railways Belachari station, moving toward Büyükkesit. From there, the train will cross into Georgia before making its final turn toward Armenia. Around that same time, over at the Belachari station, Azerbaijan Railways also sent off an 18-wagon train loaded with over 1,200 tons of wheat to Armenia. To put all of this into perspective, these numbers are part of a much larger ongoing trade flow. Looking at the overall volume so far, Azerbaijan has already exported over 14,000 tons of diesel and more than 4,000 tons of petrol directly to Armenia. Well, as we can see, this regional logistics networking is running at full capacity. That's all from me. I am Leyla Rahimli with my cameraman Zeynal Hassanov for A News.
Baku has hosted an international conference on circular green tourism, bringing together representatives from member states of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia. The event focused on sustainable tourism development, regional cooperation and new opportunities for local communities. Our report has more.
The future of sustainable tourism took center stage in Baku on Tuesday. International experts, policymakers and tourism officials gathered for the conference, Circular Green Tourism in the SICA countries. Jointly organized by Azerbaijan's State Tourism Agency and the Secretariat of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, the event brought together delegations from SICA member states across Central Asia, the Middle East and Southeast Asia.
In the beautiful city of Baku as a practical area of cooperation.
The main objective of this conference, as you asked, is to bring all SICA member states to Azerbaijan and create a platform for them to discuss circular economy principles in tourism, regenerative tourism, how to achieve beyond sustainability and to create cooperation and trust building among these states.
Opening the conference, State Tourism Agency Chairman Fuad Nagiev described circular green tourism as a key path for the industry's future and highlighted Azerbaijan's efforts to expand ecotourism, agrotourism and nature-based travel experiences. SICA Secretary General Kairat Sarıbay, meanwhile, stressed the role of tourism in fostering sustainable growth, cultural exchange and cooperation among nations.
If you promote tourism, you have to be environmentally friendly. Why? Because we are living in a time when the climate change is crucial. And we have to protect the environment for our further generations. So I believe promoting tourism must be very much in a sustainable way, with the due respect to our nature, to preserve the diversity of our planet for the next generation. So I believe that it is actually a trend now that instead of mass tourism, people trying to look into the cultural assets also in a sustainable way that will not damage the environment of our planet. This demonstrates that green tourism, environmental policy.
Circular approaches to tourism allow us to think in a more systemic way. Tourism is not a sector that can operate in isolation. The sector has a very cross-cutting and transversal value chain involving from transport to food providers, textiles, accommodation, etc.
Participants explored ways to make the tourism sector more resource efficient and environmentally responsible. Through plenary sessions, keynote speeches and expert working groups, delegates discussed initiatives such as tourism villages, training programs and investments in nature-based attractions. Speakers said these approaches can help create new economic opportunities, support local development and protect natural and cultural heritage for future generations. İlknur Seydemirova with İlkin Mehdiyev reporting from Baku, Azerbaijan.
This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay tuned to A News for more updates.